Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just Listen to One podcast. Thank you so much for coming back to this episode. I really do appreciate it. And as you can tell from this photo or even this title, I'm going to be talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. Most, if not all of you guys, probably know who he is. And I don't know if he's still, I know he has a show or documentary, I can't pronounce that word, but like a show about him on Netflix or Hulu or one of those two, if not something else about him. If you guys want to check that out, I can't remember what platform or even if it's still on there. But just in case if you don't know who he is, I'm going to be reading a couple. I have two websites that I'm going to be reading about him, and then I have like a video that I'm going to play for you guys to listen to. So about him, so let's just get right into it. I'm going to be reading the first one I have. The first one is more of his history a little bit. Jeffrey Dahmer, a convicted serial killer and sex offender. Jeffrey murdered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. He was killed in 1994 by a fellow prison inmate. This website I'm reading it from, it was updated on updated on September 15th, 2023. So all this information is from around 2023 and last updated since September of 2023. So just actually, if that kind of helps you guys to know a little bit on how old this site is and whatnot. So Jeffrey Dahmer, now recordings show he intended to keep killing. A new documentary entitled "My Son Jeffrey: The Dahmer Family Tapes" about serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer will begin streaming on September 18th on Fox Nation. The four-step series includes never before releasing audio recordings of Dahmer, including phone conversations he had with his father, I don't know how to pronounce his dad's name, so I'm going to try. Lionel, I think how you pronounce his dad's name. While in prison, according to Court TV, Dahmer said in one of recordings that he fully intended to keep killing if he hadn't been captured. Word for word, I was so wrapped up in what I was doing, I felt I was going to continue doing that for the rest of my life. Who was Jeffrey Dahmer? He was an American serial killer who took the lives of 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Over the course of more than 13 years, he sought out of victims, mostly black men, at gay bars, malls, and bus stops, lured them home with promises of money or sex, and give them alcohol laced with drugs before strangling them to death. He would then engage with sex acts with a corpse before dismembering them and disposing of them, often keeping body parts as souvenirs. He frequently took photos of his victims at various stages of the murder's process so he could recollect each act after the reveal and experience. He was captured in 1991 and sentenced to 16 life terms. He was killed by a fellow prison inmate, Christopher Crasper, in 1994. Some facts about him, as in Jeffrey. His full name was Jeffrey Dahmer. I might pronounce it a few times different ways, and I'm sorry. I know what it is. It's just like how my brain works at times. He was born on May 21st, 1960. Died on November 28th, 1994. His birthplace is Milwaukee. I can't pronounce that town, but he was born in Wisconsin, in the U.S. His zodiac sign is Gemini, and his height was 6 feet even. His childhood and friends. Jeffrey was born in Wisconsin on May 21st, 1960, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. He was described as an energetic, happy child until the age of 4, when a traumatic and painful recovery following surgery to correct a double hernia seemed to affect a change in the boy. Noticeably subdued, he became increasingly withdrawn following the birth of his younger brother and the family frequent moves. By the time he was school age, the family had to move to Idaho. From a young age, Jeffrey developed a fascination with animal bones and studied how to be clean and preserve them. As a child, he collected large insects and the skulls of small animals preserved in jars of formaldehyde, according to the Brain Master's book, The Shrine of Jeffrey Dahmer. By his early teens, he was disengaged, tensed, and large friendliness. Jeffrey claims that his compulsion towards necrophobia and murder begins around the age of 14, but it appears that the breakdown of his parents' marriage and their acrimonious divorce a few years later might have been a catalyst for turning those thoughts into actions. His parents' numerous arguments and the constant tensions in the house made him question the solidity of his family and life, according to Masters. Jeffrey also started drinking at the age of 14, and by the time of his first killing, age 18, his alcohol consumptions had spun out of control. He dropped out of Ohio State University after 1/4 term, and his frequent remarried father instated that he joined the army. He enlisted the late December 1978, and he posted a Germany shortly thereafter. His drinking problem persisted, and in early 1981, the army discharged him, although German authorities would later investigate possible connections between him and the murders that took place in the area during at this time. It is not believed that he took any victims while serving in the armed forces. Following his discharge, he returned home in Iowa. An arrest later that year for discouraging conduct prompted his father to send Jeffrey to live with his grandmother, Catherine, in Wisconsin. But his school problem continued. He was arrested the following summer for indecent exposure. He was arrested once again in 1986 when two boys accused him of masturbating in front of them. He received 1 year probationary sentence. First, for victims I'm about to talk about. Jeffrey murdered 17 men and women between 1978 and 1971. He was careful to select victims on the fringes of society who were often internment or borderline criminal, making their disappearance less noticeable and reducing the likelihood of capture. He lured them to his home and promises of money or sex, then strangled them to death. He engaged in sex acts with their bodies and kept body parts and photos of them as souvenirs. His most popular names were the Milky Cannibal and the Milky Monster, reflected his Henry's crimes. His first murder occurred just after graduating from high school in June 1978, when he picked up an 18-year-old hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks and took him home to his parents' house. Jeffrey proceeded to get the younger man drunk, and when Hicks tried to go, Jeffrey said, "I didn't want him to leave." Jeffrey killed him by strangling him in the head and striking him in the head and strangling him with a barbell. Jeffrey dismembered Hicks' coat, his body, packed the body parts in a plastic bag, and buried him in his parents' home. He later exhumed the remains, crushes the bones with a sledgehammer, and shattered them across the wood ravine. It wasn't until September 1987 that Jeffrey took his second victim, Jeffrey Toomey. They checked into a hotel room, drank, and Jeffrey eventually woke to find him dead, with no memory of previous night's activities. Later, he told police he intended to drug him, but not to kill him, and he could not believe this had happened. Jeffrey brought a large suitcase to transport his body to his grandmother's basement, where his dismembered and masturbated on the corpse before disposing the remains. He kept his head, Tombies, I don't know how to pronounce this kid's name, sorry, his head, which is wrapped in a blanket for 4 weeks after the murder. After later said that after his the killing, his obsession with killing went into full swings, and he didn't even try to stop after that. He killed 2 more victims at his grandmother's house before she forced him to move out in 1988. She had no knowledge of the crimes, but was tired of his drinking, his tendency to bring young men to her house, and the foul smells occasionally come from her basement, according to Masters. Now about the sexual assault charges and sentences. In September 1989, about a year after moving into his new apartment, he lured a 13-year-old Latin boy to his house, claiming he wanted to take nude photos for him. This resulted in charges of sexual explosion and second-degree sexual assault for him. He pleaded guilty, claiming that the boy had appeared much older. While waiting sentencing for his sexual assault case, he began to put his grandmother's basement to gruesome use. In March 1989, he lurked, drugged, strangled, sodomized, photographed, dismembered, and disposed in Anthony Sears, an aspiring model. Jeffrey found Sears particularly attractive and later said he did not want to lose him, and so Sears became the first victim from whom Jeffrey kept preserved body parts for a long period of time, mummifying his head and genitals according to Masters. At his first trial for children molestation in May 1989, Jeffrey was the model of conscience, arguing eloquently in his own defense about how he had seen the error of his ways and that his arrest marked a turning point of his life. His defense counsel argued that he needed treatment, no incarceration, and the judge agreed, handing down 1 year prison sentence and day release, allowing Jeffrey to work at his job during the day and return to prison at night, as well as a 5-year probationary sentence. Years later, in an interview with CNN, Jeffrey's dad stated that he wrote a letter to the court that it issued the sentence, requesting psychological help before his son's parole. However, Dahmer was granted an early release by the judge after serving only 10 months of his sentence. He briefly lived with his grandmother following his release, during which time does not appear to have added to his body count before moving back into his own apartment. The last 13 victims. Over the next 2 years, he would have killed 12 more people, bringing his total to 17 victims. His first victim during this time was a prostitute named Raymond Smith, whom Jeffrey lured to his apartment for sex, gave a drink laced with sleep tablets, then strangled. Jeffrey took photos of his body, suggestive positions, before dismembering him. With his next victim, Edward Smith, Jeffrey accidentally destroyed his skull while trying to dry it in the oven, making explode. He later told the police that he felt rotten about Smith's murder because it was unable to keep anything from his body, making it feel like a true waste, according to Masters. Jeffrey started developing rituals as he progressed with his killings, experimenting with chemicals, meaning with disposal, and often consuming the flesh of his victims. Jeffrey also attempted cruel lobotomies. He drilled into the skull with his 11th victim, Errol Lindsay, while he was still alive, and injected him with mucil acid. Jeffrey hoped this would place Lindsay into a permanent substance state. But Lindsay woke up during a procedure and said, "I have a headache. What time is it?" So Jeffrey strangled him. On May 27th, 1991, Jeffrey's neighbor, Sandra Smith, called the police to report that an Asian boy was running naked in the street. When the police arrived, the boy was incoherent and they accept the word of Jeffrey, while Jeffrey, a white man in a largely poor black community, that the boy was his 19-year-old lover. In fact, the boy was 14 and was unbeknown to Jeffrey, the younger brother of Latin teen Jeffrey had molested 3 years earlier. The police escorted Jeffrey and the boy home, clearly not washing up because embroiled in a homosexual domestic disturbance. They took only a cursory look around before leaving. According to Jeffrey, an officer peeked his head around in the bathroom but didn't really take a good look, and then left after telling Jeffrey to take care of the boy, according to Masters. Once they left, when he left the scene, Jeffrey injected hydrochloric acid into the boy's brain, killing him. Had the police conducted even the basic search, they wouldn't have found the body of Jeffrey's 12th victim, Tony Hughes. Jeffrey killed 4 more men before he finally got arrested. One of his last victims was Oliver Lacey, 24, whose body Jeffrey had sex before dismembering the corpse. He kept Lacey's head and heart in the refrigerator and his skeleton in the freezer. Jeffrey's arrest. Jeffrey's killing spree ended when he was arrested on July 22nd, 1991. The body parts found in Jeffrey's refrigerator and photos of his victims became extensively associated with his notable killing spree. 2 Milwaukee, Wisconsin police officers were relayed to Jeffrey when they picked up Tracy Edwards, 32-year-old black man who was wandering the streets, handcuffs dangling from his wrists. When they decided to investigate the man's claim that was a weird dude had drugged and restrained him, they arrived at Jeffrey's apartment, where he claimly offered to get the keys from the handcuffs. Edwards claims that the knife Jeffrey had threatened him with was in the bedroom. When the officers went into correct the story, he noticed pollard graphs of decimators' bodies lying around. Jeffrey was subdued by the officers, after which he muttered the words, "For what I did, I should be dead," according to Masters. Substance search revealed a head in the fridge, 3 more in the freezer, and catalog of the horrors, including previous jars containing genitals and an extensive gallery of macular Polaroid photographs of his victims. Jeffrey later said he had planned to build a private altar from his victims' skulls, adorned with intensive sticks and globes lights. He hoped that altar would be a place where I could feel like home, according to Masters. Trial and imprisonment. Jeffrey's trial began in January 1992. Given that the majority of Jeffrey's victims were black, there were considerable racial tensions, so strict society precautions were taken, including an 8-foot barrier from bulletproof glass that separated him from a gallery. The conclusion of only one black person on the jury provoked further unrest, but unlimitedly continued and short-lived. Jeffrey's dad and his second wife attended the trial throughout. Jeffrey entirely pleaded not guilty to all charges, despite having confessed to the killings during the police interrogation. He eventually charged a plea to guilty by virtue of innocence. His defense then offered the gruesome details of his behavior as proof that only someone insane could commit such terrible acts. The injured choose to believe the prosecution asserts that Jeffrey was fully aware of his acts were evil and close to committing them anyways. On February 15th, 1992, they returned after approximately 10 hours deliberating to find him guilty but sane on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, with a 16th term track in May. Jeffrey reportedly adjusted well to prison while at a Columbia correctional institution in south central Wisconsin. Though he was intentionally kept apart from a general population, he eventually convinced authorities to allow him to integrate more fully with other inmates. He found religion in the form of books and photos sent to him by his father, and he was granted permission by a Colombian correctional institutions to be baptized by a local pastor. A little bit about his death. Jeffrey was killed on November 28th, 1994 by a fellow prison inmate, Christopher Scavier. In accordance with his inclusion in regular work details, Jeffrey was assigned to work with 2 other convicted murderers, Scavier and Jesse Anderson. After they had been left alone to complete their tasks, guards returned to find that Scavier had brutally beaten both men with a metal bar from the prison weight room. Jeffrey was pronounced dead after approximately 1 hour. Anderson died from his injuries days later. A prison guard claimed that shortly after the murders, Scavier, who has believed to be I can't pronounce this mental health thing word, schizophrenic, and God told me to do it. In 2015, Scarver spoke to the New York Post about his reasons for killing Jeffrey. Scarver allegedly that he was disturbed not only by Jeffrey's crimes but by a habit of Jeffrey had developed a vanishing silver limbs from prison food and antiging other inmates. After being taunted by Jeffrey and Anderson, during their work details, Scarver said that he confronted Jeffrey about his crimes before beating the two men to death. He also claimed that prison guards allowed the murders to happen by leaving them alone. Catherine Lace, the mother of Jeffrey's victim, Oliver Lacey, said his death brought her no closure, though her is worse now because he's not suffering like we are. Jeffrey's house. In 1996, Jeffrey's death, a group of Malaquian businessmen raised more than $400,000 to purchase the item and use for crimes, including blaze saws, handcuffs, and a refrigerator to store body parts. When they promptly destroyed them in an effort to distance the city from the horrors of Jeffrey's actions, the ensuing media crisis surrounding his trial. And that's just overall what that site is, other than his different kind of shows about him. I'm going to read the second website that I have. This one, it has been updated in April 9th, 2024. This one is called Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story, How the Serial Killer Was Caught. The true crime drama, which earned Niecy Nash an Emmy in 2023 for Outstanding Support Actress in a Limited or Ethically series, stars Mara of at East Town Emmy. Well, okay, there we go. What crimes did Jeffrey committed? He committed his first crime in 1978, 3 weeks after he graduated from high school, which I kind of already talked about. I'm just trying to not, repeat everything, honestly. And you guys already know that. How did he got caught? You kind of already know that. So it's practically the same, practically sums up what I already said. So now I'm going to just click this little video on YouTube of never before seen footage of an interview with Jeffrey in 1993.
It's Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer and cannibal whose saga of evil has been given new life in the hit Netflix series Monster.
I'm going to ask you some questions that are tough.
In this never-before-seen video from the Inside Edition archives, he's clearly nervous. His His hands won't stay still as he prepares for the exclusive 1993 interview.
What questions are you going to start out with?
A new generation is learning about his horrifying crimes through the #1 Netflix series.
In what appears to be a psychopathic mass murder.
Destination 32 clear.
This world-exclusive interview took place inside the maximum security prison in Wisconsin, where he was serving 999 years. He was escorted by 3 prison guards. One officer held each arm as he was taken in handcuffs into an elevator. Nobody was taking any chances with the most notorious killer in America. Dahmer was 33 when he told Nancy Glass about his twisted motive for killing 17 men.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
For you.
He described how he picked up his victims in gay bars and brought them home.
I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. The person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
And he made a startling admission about the evil urges that propelled him to kill.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do have the old compulsions.
A creature of the night, he said he slept most of the day in prison. During the interview, he asked for several breaks.
Can we cut the film here for
Sure.
Dahmer was murdered by another prison inmate just a year and 10 months after this interview. A form of justice he said he deserved.
That's what I deserve. I deserve death.
So that was like a 2-minute kind of interview, part of an interview for you guys to kind of know his side of stories, but not at the same time. If you guys enjoyed this episode, let me know in the comments below, or by liking or sharing this, whatever you feel more comfortable. And if you guys have any ideas for future podcast topics, let me know in the comments below. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.